All right, let's dive into something a lot of you have been requesting: the science of sleep. We're going deep with Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep. You all are curious about why we sleep, and I gotta say, I am too. It does seem pretty vulnerable, doesn't it? You're just out. And of course, what happens when we don't get enough sleep? So get ready because we're going to unpack the science behind this essential but often neglected part of our lives.
It's interesting because for centuries, sleep was a total mystery to
Oh,
scientists.
really?
Yeah, I mean, we knew why we had the other basic drives, eating, drinking, reproduction,
Mhm.
but sleep, total mystery.
That's so wild. You'd think, I mean, we spend like a third of our lives asleep, completely unconscious.
I know.
And like, wouldn't it make more sense, evolutionarily speaking, to be alert? Avoid those predators, find food?
Exactly. And that's what makes sleep such a fascinating puzzle. Like, it seems so counterintuitive to survival.
Yeah.
But we know it's absolutely essential. That's what makes this book so interesting. Matthew Walker, he's a leading sleep expert. He's a neuroscientist. And he lays out a really convincing argument for why sleep is so incredibly important.
So, okay, let's get into it. If sleep is not just about our bodies resting, what is actually happening when we doze off?
Well, our brains, they're definitely not inactive during sleep. We actually cycle through these different stages. The main ones are non-REM and REM sleep.
Okay, yeah. I've heard those terms before, but I'm a little fuzzy on the details, to be honest.
Right. So think of NREM sleep as deep sleep. That's where brain activity really slows down.
Okay.
And Walker has this great analogy to illustrate this. He says, imagine, a huge football stadium. It's packed. People are all chatting, excited before the game starts.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
So that's kind of like your brain when you're awake. So many different areas firing off signals. But then the game begins, right? And the crowd, they all focus on this unified rhythmic chant. So that's like deep sleep, this synchronized low-frequency hum of brain activity.
Wow. I love that image. So, our brain is basically going from total chaos to order.
It is.
Okay, so what about REM sleep then? That's where the dreams happen, right? All the crazy stuff.
Exactly. During REM sleep, our brains become much more active, almost as if we're awake. Our eyes are darting around, but our muscles are essentially paralyzed, which is probably a good thing considering some of those bizarre scenarios our dreams cook up.
Huh. Oh yeah. I've definitely had my fair share of REM sleep adventures that I'm glad stayed in my dreams.
Yeah,
But some people swear that their most creative ideas come to them in dreams. Is there any science behind that?
there actually is. Walker argues that REM sleep is it's like this backward Google search for our brains.
Interesting. It's kind of cool because it allows us to make these unexpected connections between our memories. And this fosters creativity. In fact, he actually even cites examples of famous discoveries, like works of art that were inspired by dreams.
Oh, wow. Like what?
Well, you've heard of Dmitri Mendeleev? He created the periodic table of
Oh,
elements.
yeah, yeah.
Well, supposedly he dreamt the whole thing.
What?
And Mary Shelley, Frankenstein.
Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Classic.
Well, she got the idea for the novel from a super vivid dream.
No way.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I always thought, I don't know, those aha moments, after a good night's sleep, I always figured they were just coincidences. But it sounds like there's a real, I don't know, neurological process at play here. So we're cycling through all these stages all night. What's the point? Like, what's so important about deep sleep and REM sleep, I guess?
That's the big question that leads us to why sleep is so crucial for our health and our well being. So, for example, deep sleep. That's where memory consolidation really happens. Okay, let's talk about that. I'm all ears because I am always looking for ways to improve my memory. So, deep sleep, it's like our brain's filing system or something.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. You see, our brains, they have two main storage areas for memories. The hippocampus, which is kind of like a temporary inbox, and then there's the cortex, which is more for long-term storage. So throughout the day, as we experience new things, the hippocampus, it just takes it all in.
So, it's holding on to all those names and facts and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. But the thing is, the hippocampus, it can only hold so much, right? It's like a holding cell. That's where deep sleep comes in. It's like this memory courier service. It moves those memories from that temporary storage of the hippocampus to the long-term storage of the cortex.
Wow, so it's literally transferring information while we sleep.
Yeah, precisely. And not only does it transfer it, but it actually strengthens those memories too, makes them less likely to just fade away, kind of like hitting that save button on a document.
Oh, that makes so much sense. I mean, I've definitely noticed sometimes I remember things better after a good night's sleep, and I just figured, oh, I'm less groggy or whatever. But it sounds like my brain's actually had time to like process and store the information. Are there any studies that show this?
Oh, there are tons. Walker, he talks about this one where people had to learn a bunch of facts before bed.
Yeah.
The people that got a full night's sleep, they remembered so much more the next day compared to the sleep-deprived folks.
Oh, so like pulling an all-nighter to cram for an exam, that's actually backfiring.
Yeah, big time. You're much better off getting a solid night's sleep. Let your brain do its thing.
Okay, that's a game changer for sure. I'm ditching the all-nighters. So what about naps though? Do those have any impact on memory?
That's a great question. And yeah, they actually do. Walker found that like a 90-minute nap, after a learning session, that boosted memory performance
Hmm.
like crazy. People who napped, they remembered way more information than those who stayed awake.
So naps aren't just about feeling refreshed. They're actually helping our brains learn. Oh man, this deep dive is already paying off. So is it just facts and figures that sleep helps us remember? What about physical skills? Like learning to play an instrument or a sport or something like that.
Oh, that's a great point. And you know what? Sleep is critical for those too. Walker, he did a study where people learned this finger tapping sequence. The ones who slept after learning, their speed and accuracy, it was like night and day compared to the others. And get this, sleep actually shifted control of those motor skills to a different part of the brain, so the movements became more automatic and effortless.
So it's like sleep takes something we have to like consciously think about and makes it like an instinct, a habit.
Exactly. It's like our brains are practicing in our sleep. Pretty amazing, right? And that's just, scratching the surface of what Walker covers. He also dives into how sleep is crucial for child development.
Okay, I'm curious about that. I've got some little nieces and nephews, so this is relevant.
We'll get this. Deep sleep is especially crucial for brain maturation in kids and teenagers. It's like the brain is being fine-tuned while they sleep. During deep sleep, the brain prunes away unnecessary neural connections to make way for more efficient pathways.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like streamlining the brain's wiring, making everything run smoother.
Exactly. And this pruning process is super important during adolescence, when the brain is going through a ton of changes.
It's like teenagers, they're literally sleeping on it to figure out who they are and where they fit in.
Uh-huh. That's a great way to put it. The problem is, teenagers often don't get enough sleep, especially with those early school start times. Walker says they need around 8 to 10 hours a night, but they're rarely getting that.
That makes me wonder. Teenagers, they're known for like mood swings and being impulsive. Could that be because of a lack of sleep? I mean, I remember being a teenager and mornings were just rough.
I hear ya. Teenagers, their circadian rhythms, they actually shift. They naturally want to stay up later and sleep in later. So those early school start times are basically fighting against their biology.
Wow. I never realized that. So it's not just laziness, it's actually how they're wired.
It really is. And the consequences, they go way beyond just feeling tired. Sleep deprivation in teens can lead to all sorts of problems with memory, with attention, decision-making, even mental health issues. It's a tough time for them.
This is making me rethink like everything I thought I knew about sleep. It's so much more than just resting our bodies. But doesn't the need for sleep decrease as we get older? I mean, my grandparents, they seem to do just fine on a few hours a night.
Yeah, that's a really common misconception. While our sleep patterns do change as we age, the need for sleep doesn't actually decrease. In fact, older adults, they tend to experience a decline in deep sleep, which, as we've talked about, is so crucial for memory and brain health.
So it's almost like a double whammy. We need that deep sleep, but we're getting less of it as we age. What are the implications of that?
Well, unfortunately, that decline in deep sleep, it's linked to a higher risk of cognitive decline and even Alzheimer's disease.
Okay, that is unsettling. Is there anything we can do to prevent that decline or even like improve sleep quality as we age?
Absolutely. There are definitely steps we can take to improve sleep quality at any age. We'll get into those strategies a bit later, but the main takeaway here is prioritizing sleep. It's honestly one of the best things you can do for your brain health, no matter how old you are.
This is all so fascinating. I'm starting to see sleep as like a superpower. Something
Right.
that can actually enhance our abilities and protect our brains.
It really is. It's an active process that's essential for our survival, for our well-being.
Mm.
And while we spend a lot of time talking about the brain, Walker, he doesn't stop there. He also explores the surprising and sometimes pretty alarming consequences of sleep deprivation on our physical health.
Okay, now I'm kind of nervous. What else is he revealing?
Well, are you ready to dive into how sleep impacts our hearts, our metabolism, and even our immune system?
Hit me with it. Let's see what else this deep dive has in store. All right, so we've talked about how amazing sleep is for our brains, but I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about what happens when we don't get enough. Does it, like, mess with our bodies too?
It really does, and the effects are way more widespread than most people think. Walker's big point is that sleep deprivation, it doesn't just make you feel tired, it has some serious consequences for almost every system in your body.
Okay, well, don't hold back. What kind of damage are we talking about here?
Well, let's start with the cardiovascular system. That's your heart and blood vessels, right? It turns out that not getting enough sleep puts a huge strain on your heart.
Really? But how? Isn't it just like resting when we sleep?
It might feel that way, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. When you're sleep deprived, your sympathetic nervous system, that's one that controls your fight or flight response, it basically goes into overdrive.
Hmm.
So your heart rate and blood pressure, they stay elevated even when you should be resting.
Oh, wow. So it's like our bodies are constantly stressed out, even if we don't like feel stressed.
Exactly. And over time, that chronic stress really takes a toll on your heart. Studies show a connection between sleep deprivation and a much higher risk of heart disease, hypertension, even stroke. It's not something to mess around with.
Yeah, you're telling me that. Okay, this is making me rethink those late nights for sure. What about our metabolism? Does sleep deprivation mess with that too?
It does, big time.
Mm-hmm.
Walker actually calls sleep deprivation the perfect recipe for obesity.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Explain that one. I always thought those late night cravings were just my willpower failing?
Well, willpower probably plays a role, but it's not the whole story. You see, when you don't get enough sleep, your body makes more of the hormone ghrelin, and that's the one that makes you feel hungry. And it makes less leptin, which is the one that makes you feel full. So you're basically fighting a losing battle against your own biology.
So I'm hungrier and I'm craving like all the wrong stuff. That's a terrible combination.
It is. And to make matters worse, sleep deprivation also throws off your body's ability to regulate blood sugar. There's research showing that people who only got like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night, they developed pre-diabetic blood sugar levels after just 1 week.
1 week. That is terrifying. I had no idea the link between sleep and blood sugar was that strong.
Oh, yeah. It's a powerful connection. It makes sense when you think about it. Sleep is when our bodies repair and reset themselves. And if we don't give ourselves enough time to do that, things start to break down.
Okay, so we've covered the heart, we've covered metabolism, and it's not looking good for either of them when it comes to sleep deprivation. What other systems are impacted?
Well, how about the one that's supposed to protect us from getting sick? The immune system. Turns out sleep deprivation really weakens our defenses, making us much more likely to get infections.
Wait, are you serious? So, like, pulling an all-nighter could actually make me more likely to catch a cold.
That's what the research says. People who consistently get less than 7 hours of sleep a night, they're 3 times more likely to catch a cold than those who get 8 hours or more.
Wow. I always thought that was like an old wives' tale or something.
Yeah.
What's the connection there? Why does sleep loss affect our immunity?
Well, one of the key factors is something called cytokines. Those are proteins that help our immune cells fight off infections. And when we don't get enough sleep, our production of cytokines just drops, leaving us more vulnerable.
So it's like our body's army is understaffed and undersupply.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it's not just colds we have to worry about. Chronic sleep deprivation is also linked to a higher risk of developing really serious illnesses, like cancer.
Okay, this is officially a wake-up call. I'm starting to see how dangerous this really is.
Yeah, it's definitely something to take seriously. We evolved to need sleep for a reason. It's that fundamental to our health and well-being.
So what can we do about it? I mean, I'm feeling pretty motivated right now to make sleep more of a priority. Does Walker offer any advice on how we can improve our sleep habits?
He does. He actually dedicates a good chunk of the book to practical strategies. One of the most important things is to try and establish a regular sleep-wake cycle, even on the weekends. Your body really thrives on routine, and that includes sleep.
So consistency is key. No more sleeping until noon on Saturdays, huh?
Well, a little flexibility is fine, but yeah, the closer you can stick to a regular schedule, the better. He also recommends creating a relaxing bedtime routine, something to help signal to your body that it's time to wind down.
Like taking a warm bath, reading a book, maybe listening to some calming music.
Exactly. Anything that helps you relax and de-stress. He also talks about how important it is to make your bedroom a sanctuary for sleep. Keep it cool, keep it dark, keep it quiet, and absolutely no screens in the hour before bed.
Right. That blue light from our phones and laptops, that's a total sleep saboteur. I've noticed I feel so much more alert after scrolling through social media before bed.
It's super common. That blue light messes with our melatonin production. That's the hormone that helps regulate our sleep-wake cycle. And while we're on the topic of things to avoid, Walker also says to cut out caffeine and alcohol in the hours before bed. They can really mess with your sleep quality.
It all makes so much sense. Is there anything else we can do to improve our sleep?
Regular exercise is fantastic for sleep, but try to avoid any really intense workouts too close to bedtime. And, if you're really struggling with insomnia, Walker really recommends CBTI, that's cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. It's a really effective treatment that targets the underlying causes of insomnia rather than just masking the symptoms.
So it's like a more holistic approach, right? Rather than just relying on sleeping pills, which we know can have all sorts of side effects.
Exactly. It's about learning those healthy sleep habits that will last a lifetime.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I honestly had no idea how important sleep is for, well, everything. Our physical health, our mental well-being.
It really is one of the most fundamental things we can do for ourselves. And yet, so often it's the first thing we sacrifice.
Well, not anymore. After learning all of this, I'm putting sleep at the top of my list.
That's great to hear. Remember, knowledge is power. And in this case, knowledge about sleep can truly transform your health.
Couldn't agree more. Any final thoughts for our listeners as we wrap up this deep dive?
Well, Walker leaves us with a pretty thought-provoking question. Knowing what we now know about sleep, should we reconsider our cultural obsession with, burning the midnight oil? What would a more sleep-positive culture look like?
That's such a great question. It's definitely time to stop celebrating busyness and sleep deprivation and start recognizing sleep for what it truly is, a fundamental pillar of our health and well-being.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for joining us on this fascinating deep dive into the science of sleep. We hope you learned something new and, most importantly, that you'll prioritize getting those Z's sweet dreams.